Welcome to Empire State of Grind, a podcast about the people building the next wave of tech startups in and out of New York City. Please be advised that the hosts of this podcast are practicing lawyers or other professionals in the tech industry, and that some of the guest employers on this podcast may be clients of the hosts. The information and content provided during this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal or financial advice, or as the positions or stances of the employers of any of the individuals.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Empire State of Grind, the show where we learn about the people building the next wave of tech companies in and out of New York City. On today's episode, I am joined by Ben Hills, founder and CEO of Iris, the modern-day deal desk that leverages generative AI to speed through last-mile sales requests, like RFPs and security questionnaires. We will learn about how this idea grew from a pain point Ben felt as a sales leader in the highly regulated EdTech space, and how the emergence of generative AI is changing the game for how companies can leverage their own intelligence for quick turnarounds on tasks that used to take weeks and multiple departments buy-in. But before we dive in, I'd like to make a small request to you, the audience. Please click the subscribe button, leave some comments, and consider sharing with your like-minded friends and colleagues. As is the common theme with the guests we bring on the show, we ourselves are looking to build something big out of New York. Thanks for listening, and let's dive into the episode. All right, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Empire State of Grind. I'm here today with Ben Hills, the CEO and founder of Iris. Ben, how are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, nice New York City day finally.
It's gorgeous out.
Get to see the sun. So why don't you start off, tell us a little bit about Iris and kind of like the problems you guys are solving.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started Iris about a year ago. Before this, I led an EdTech company. We were selling software to colleges and universities. I worked with about 1,000 colleges in my time there. And one of the things that I did was oversee our sales team and our product team and our engineering team. And I had the fantastic responsibility of managing all of the RFPs, security questionnaires, and proposals we had to produce.
Right, which makes sense. Regulated education.
Hyper-regulated industry. You can't play in the space and sell to any college without showing quite a bit about the technical complexities of your solution.
For the audience, those who don't know, an RFP is a request for proposal.
Yes.
So when larger, usually more regulated or just larger institutions are looking to purchase new products, they basically put out this thing called an RFP to get information from multiple vendors about different tools to solve the problem, right?
Exactly. So college wants to buy software for virtual tours on their campus. They put out a request for proposal. They talk about the 100 things they're looking for the solution to do. And then companies like mine would put together a 50-page proposal explaining all of our case studies, all of our features, everything that we did. And it was our opportunity to win the business. Now, it's actually 10 years ago, it was almost just government contracting that used RFPs. But today, 2/3 of enterprise sales, about $10 trillion a year across 15 industries, rely on RFPs as their procurement vehicle. So oil and gas, transportation management, insurance, financial services, staffing, marketing and advertising, they're all now relying on this particular process to procure whatever sort of solution it is, whether it's software, hardware, people, services, et cetera. So at the time, I was running an EdTech company. We had just exited, and a sales rep hit me up and was like, "Hey, Ben, I know you don't work here anymore, but I have an RFP due next week. You know everything about our company, and I'd love for you to help me out with it." And at this point, I mean, I was ready to put shards of glass through my eyes. I had done 1,000 of them over my tenure there. Yeah, exactly. For a while, most people could win business on a 3-martini lunch and a handshake. And then as more of the world adopted more complex technology solutions, like picture even like in the telco space, when contact centers move from hardwired phones to software-based solutions and everything just becomes more online and more complicated, buyers' expectations started shifting. And so now buyers are, as a result, expecting a lot more from their vendors, asking a lot more questions. I think it's a net positive for the world. It's not a bad thing that buyers want.
It's also to make sure you can meet like minimum requirements and things like that, right?
Yep.
So they don't get tied up, oh, we love the demo, and then find out the security doesn't meet some protocol we need.
That's exactly right. So there's, I mean, Gosh, I think it's like 20% of the RFPs a company responds to, they find out pretty much at the finish line that there's some qualification they don't meet and they actually shouldn't have responded to it at all. You know, I talk to CEOs all the time where they churn more customers than they should because of things that are mischaracterized at the finish line of a deal cycle, right? So they end up getting to a kickoff call with the client and the client's like, wait a minute, you told me A, B, and C, but you actually do X, Y, and Z. And to me, it was a really interesting problem to solve. So for up until 2 years ago, like pre-ChatGPT and AI revolution, all the software we use is just effectively repositories of content. So if I could store every RFP answer I've ever had, it could then help me find something that's similar to answer a net new RFP.
You can make playbooks or whatever, but you still have to go sift through. Yeah.
You still have to sift through it. You still have to revise and rewrite everything and shape it for the particular prospect you're talking to. So if you think like in the EdTech space, if I'm selling University of Arizona versus Savannah College of Art and Design, same product, same solution, I position them very differently. I highlight different client stories. The ROI is different because the buyer's just different. And so as a result, companies spend 32 hours across 9 individuals just to get to first draft.
I think that's maybe to me the most, I don't want to say annoying, but tedious aspect of RFPs is how many different departments need to weigh in on what is not even a purchase yet.
It's exactly
different when it's revenue generating. People get more excited when it's
speculative.
Maybe we'll
revenue
get
generating.
their business in a month.
Yep. And so what hit me the first time I used ChatGPT was we finally have the opportunity to quantify institutional knowledge and quite literally take unstructured data and turn that into numbers that computers understand. And then that allows us to always generate a high quality draft based on our latest business information. So instead of relying on my previous RFP responses, what we built at Iris is we can contextualize your latest product release notes, your latest case studies, your latest sales collateral, your latest press releases. All of that gets contextualized in an AI database. And then when you have an RFP or a security review or you need to generate a proposal, Iris can use your most up-to-date information and shape that based on the particular prospect you're talking to. And so I had this hunch, and I called up someone named Tess Kelly Frazier, who's the chief compliance officer at an EdTech unicorn called Class Technologies. She's been the chief compliance officer at multiple EdTech companies. And I asked her if anyone was solving the problem this way. And her reaction was, no one's doing it in this way. And if you build it, I'll be your first customer.
Cool.
And so then I called up 2 engineers who I worked with at my last company. I said, hey guys, I have an idea. I think it could become a company. I'll give you guys some equity in the company that doesn't exist yet. I don't want to raise money until I have a customer, and I'm not gonna have a customer until I have a product. So if you can build this on nights and weekends during your job, we can make it happen. A few months later, we had the first version of our product. We had our first paying customer, and we used that to raise our initial funding, build out our product to the market, and make it happen. Yeah.
And when was this? Like, when did the first customer start using the product?
First customer started using the product in the summer of 2023.
Oh, so really?
And then we spent, I would say, 6 or 8 months working just with 3 customers on refining the product and also going through the SOC 2 Type 2 process. So as you can imagine, companies are putting their most sensitive data in our product, right? I mean, they're uploading their roadmap information, their finance, like you need hypersensitive data to do this.
100%. Just to take a step back, RFPs ask for not just what the products do, but like the viability of the company.
Yep.
So they want to know financial numbers. So finance typically weighs in. Security protocols. So security weighs in. Like I said, they'll try to pre-negotiate certain contract terms. So legal weighs in. So it's not just like deep in one area.
Oh yeah, I mean it could range from 3 years of financial statements to show that the company has a good footing. It could be anything about active litigation and previous litigation. I mean it's incredibly deep.
What you see too is like the reason is these are larger companies that have seen the downside of working with like new technologies in the past, where it's like that company's not there in the future and we just invested all this time and effort. So especially for startups, RFPs are like a big hurdle in that way, because you may have maybe the hottest product, but these other things can not just, I don't want to say go against you, but they're hard to find and like present responsibly.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It's hard to present responsibly, and people can see through the bullshit, right? So they, like you said,
talking to procurement people.
Exactly. And
bullshit is their...
and it's their job to make sure that they don't risk their company by signing up with a bad vendor. And so as a result, we couldn't get any customers without being SOC 2 Type 2 certified. And for those who don't know, SOC 2, it's not an official standard. It's actually an attestation done by an auditor saying you are doing the things you say you do in your security policies. So the first thing you have to do is actually write your security policies and implement everything from like who has access to your AWS cloud instance to screensaver locks on your employees' computers and encrypted hard drives and all that.
Yeah. The other pro tip I would give to those who are building companies is this is something you get in front of.
100%.
If you can present someone like, here's our security documentation and how we do it. It gets your potential clients or customers like off this defensive or offensive footing of thinking you're not responsible. And they go, oh, this company's doing it right.
And so huge. It's huge. And I mean, two things I would say. One, because most people's response to the security question in the sales process is, that's not my department, let me get back to you, right? Or, hey, I can fill out your 1,000-question security review, but it might take my team 2 weeks. That immediately puts up this opaque feeling for the prospect where they're like, why would it take you 2 weeks to explain that you're secure, right? Versus leading with, here's our approach, here's our SOC 2 report, et cetera.
Yeah, why don't we take a little step back and like holistically, like, we see what an RFP is. It's a request for a lot of detailed information that no one person knows. How is Iris solving this problem, and like kind of what does it look like from someone who's using the product?
Yeah, so what it looks like is, one, we're going to integrate with wherever all this information lives. So we might be pulling your latest security policies from your GRC tool like Drata or Vanta, your latest marketing collateral from HighSpot or Seismic. We're pulling from your Google Drive. We're then integrating with your CRM, typically Salesforce, so that it's all tied to the sales rep. And now Iris is building up its brain about your business. So unlike ChatGPT that is, out there trying to use all the world's knowledge to hallucinate and come up with an answer, Iris is a private enclosed ecosystem that's built just around your business's information. And so the only information that Iris will surface to generate responses is whatever you give it access to. And as a result, companies aren't going to get made up features in an RFP response that ChatGPT thinks are cool. They're going to get actual high quality narrative content that's written and grounded in the truth of their most up-to-date business information.
Very cool.
And the results for our customers have been bonkers. Our customers are going from 2-week turnaround times to their prospects with 60 hours of manual work involving everyone from the C-suite down to the technical support team. And it's now they're getting it back to their prospect the next day with 2 hours of editing a draft that an individual sales engineer can do.
The other funny thing, so not only is turnaround time helpful, but the funny thing I experienced, probably because I was at the end of the funnel, is they're always coming to legal with like, oh, and the deadline's tomorrow.
Yeah. So the very, very, very common problem that we hear when we talk with our customers is Friday at 5 o'clock, my sales rep sends me over an RFP and they say, should we respond to this? By the way, it's due Monday. And we actually hear from people quite a bit that it's so emotionally overwhelming that they'll often ignore the email and won't even look at the attachment because they're just like dreading what they're going to see on the other side of it. Fair. So one of the neat externalities we found is the actual cultural shift that our software pushes inside of a company, where their sales team and their marketing team and their compliance team are all working better together because they're no longer playing the like nose game on who's going to do this work.
I think too is you probably don't look at RFPs as like so annoying versus you're confident you're putting something forward, and if it turns into an opportunity, you go, wow, what value, versus I think sometimes you only look at the ones that didn't turn into anything. I mean, I was lucky to be at a Datadog where like we close a lot of deals, but that ethos around it is still there.
Yeah, no one wants to be a part of it. And what's funny is the majority of the time is not even just writing the content, it's verifying that the information's accurate. Hey, is this still how this feature works? Do we still have this integration?
Yeah.
And the project management around it, right? So you're like putting your RFP in a Google Doc, you're commenting and tagging on all these people, you're slacking them every 10 minutes saying, did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it? And what we've been able to do at Iris is take the three main roles in the RFP process: an expert in your business, a world-class copywriter, and a 24/7 project manager, and take all of those functions and combine them into one self-service product.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me. Like where AI is this is the strength right now, right? It's
100%.
If you have a ton of information specific to any task or person or just specific information, we can unearth a lot of efficiency.
Yep.
From that data. So I do want to ask a little, this is just my own curiosity, but so clearly the back end is powered by, all right, the companies bring their collateral.
Mm-hmm.
The front end of like, hey, I load an RFP in here. Do you guys have a way of, I'm going to guess it's like a machine learning aspect of you see all these RFPs and are able to digest kind of like what they're looking for better?
Yes.
So explain that part.
Yeah. So in addition to contextualizing your business knowledge, it's the full project management and collaboration and workflow part as well. And so when you drop an RFP in, Iris is going to instantly, what people call shredding the RFP, and actually pull out the legal requirements, the insurance requirements, the tactical requirements, the scoring rubric, and give you at a glance everything you need to know. Are we even qualified for this? And what's neat is the more you use Iris, the smarter it gets. And once you're integrated with your CRM, we can start telling you based on the deals you've won or lost, whether or not you're qualified for any net new given RFP and opportunity.
Oh, cool.
So you drop the RFP in and we're like, hey, this is specifically asking for Google hosted software. You've never won a deal that's based on Google. That might actually help your team prioritize their roadmap. So one of the things that I knew from being chief operating officer at a company was the RFP is not just about that particular isolated deal. It's about really understanding buyers' shifting expectations. And so you start seeing trend lines in RFPs.
Aggregated amounts
exactly.
Of this. Yeah, interesting.
So you start seeing that all of a sudden 50% of your deals are asking about certain AI features or asking for a certain compliance requirement. And so what happens at the finish line of a deal cycle sets up the map for a successful partnership. And so for us, we look at wedging at the finish line, the RFP, the proposal, the statement of work, et cetera. But we then take all that knowledge and use it in the pre and post sale journey also. So when you win an RFP, we turn it into a handoff plan. So your implementation team can know every promise you've made. We also give that to the compliance team. So when you need to go and see, hey, which customers did we guarantee a certain SLA for or weekend support for, we built the algorithms to automatically create that. And then all that knowledge becomes democratized for your sales team. So when your sales reps upstream are on a call with a prospect, they can prompt Iris to get instant access to information. So they're now pulling from this approved source of knowledge and getting client stories, talking points, business cases. And so the result is this subject matter expertise that used to be bottlenecked at the finish line of the deal cycle is now expressed across the entire customer lifecycle.
We're going to take a short break to hear from one of our sponsors, but when we come back, we'll learn about the early pushback Ben was getting from investors regarding building an application layer AI company and how that has quickly changed in the matter of a few years.
This episode is brought to you by NextGen Law. NextGen Law supports today's modern tech companies, bringing expertise in drafting and negotiating customer contracts and scaling of go-to-market legal functions. For more information, visit nextgenlaw.com. That's NextGenLaw with hyphens in between each word.com.
We had spoken about this, and I think the audience will find it interesting. So we're talking a little, or not a little, we're talking a lot about like what AI can do.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember when we were speaking about you being on the show, you had mentioned how investors had looked at this initially for what is like the application layer of AI, meaning what you can make a product out of the technology. Yeah. And so I'd love to hear more about like how you saw things shift and, you know, your experience in general, like pitching investors and raising money.
Yeah. So summer 2023, I had my first customer and I went and started talking to investors, and the prevailing notion was that there would be no application layer industry. And what most investors said was, ChatGPT is going to come out with everything, or Google's going to come out with everything. Everything will live just in prompting ChatGPT. There's not going to, you know, Sam Altman was all over the news with like the one-person billion-dollar company and like.
So they didn't think the products wouldn't exist, just that the opportunity would be just held by those making the LLMs?
They thought that, and most of the money was going into foundational models and infrastructure layer. And like, for me personally, like, I mean, I have to get excited about what I'm doing every day to put my all into it. And I love people and users and application layer. Like in my last company, the most gratifying experience was upskilling thousands of non-digital native admissions counselors and financial aid counselors and changing their behavior and them having like their light bulb moment for the tech. So I knew that I wanted to be delivering a platform that people were logging into every day and taking a business process that's existed for a while and transforming it with the new technology. So I was very dead set on chasing the end users and the application layer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Investors, all the money was going into the infrastructure layer, observability and, you know, prompt management and all that. And the most common response I got was, people are just going to prompt this in ChatGPT. And everyone thought that everything would just be prompting in a chat box. Now, I thought that was fucking asinine.
It is.
I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on the show.
Yeah, you can curse.
But you know, I thought two things. One, prompting in the ChatGPT interface is like the command line era of AI, right? Like if you think back to when all computers were like green screen MS-DOS, like it just felt to me like it's not going to all be prompts, because the level of expertise needed to prompt something effectively to get back what you need really effectively and really well done is just a very high
I mean, it's only
bar.
half of the equation. Half of it is like,
exactly,
can I get you an answer? But the other half is, what are you asking me?
Yes.
And I didn't learn this as it came out, but my experience is now all my clients are an application layer companies. So the idea that investors were like, that'll never happen. You could just ask ChatGPT to finish your code or make an application or what. It's like,
it
that's
was
insane.
Like, it was the prevailing notion. And like, I didn't do like a big fundraising tour then, so I'm not, you know, going to speak on behalf of the entire
it's also,
investor
I think,
community.
Fair to say that was like 6 months after like this.
It was 6 months after the ChatGPT boom, 100%,
So,
which felt like a really long time after it. But the other thing that was funny to me was, these are the same investors that have seen other technology shifts not follow that same playbook. So I was sitting there scratching my head like, wait a minute, like we've all read Innovator's Dilemma. We all have sort of seen the largest companies never capitalize on end user opportunities in the best ways and trip over themselves. And so it feels like the perfect time to be building a startup in the application layer.
Yeah. So what was the difference, I guess, from the people who did invest? Like, how did they see it differently, or did you just learn to pitch better?
I mean, it was a mix of both, right? Like, one was my pitches got better. Two, our pre-seed round, which was raised in that summer, was all angels who had been either investors or founders in software companies. So Dave Hartwig, the founding partner of Sapphire Ventures, he led the seed round in Looker and Fitbit, Outreach, a number of other software companies. He saw it as a no-brainer. He was like, I know that enterprises will always buy turnkey solutions that are built to solve specific problems. Michael Chasen, who's the founder of Blackboard, at one point the youngest CEO on the NASDAQ, was like, this is the most boring way to make $1 billion since I thought about putting a syllabus in the cloud, right? Like, of course, a company's biggest deals come from an RFP. People are going to want a solution for this. So I found investors who weren't trying to make me shift my mission and my objective. And we're also really bought into me as a first-time founder. And so, you're getting a lot of trust in you and not having a track record. And they were really adamant that we were on the right path and we're doing the right thing.
That's cool. So, I mean, I guess if I sum it up, it's like you align with the right people. They see a similar vision.
Yeah.
In my opinion, generally in life, those who don't see it don't matter. Who cares?
Yeah.
They're going to be there.
Dude, I hear from founders all the time that if they shift their vision in the fundraising process to align with what they think the investor wants to hear, they either end up with the wrong people on their board pushing their company in the wrong direction, or investors just see through it, right? Like they want a founder to have a high level of conviction.
Do you use like OpenAI exclusively as your LLM, or
no? We actually don't use OpenAI at all.
Oh, interesting.
When we started building, the cost to access OpenAI's models in a private enclosed ecosystem was a floor of about $6 million. Now that's changed since then.
Yeah, because they have competitors.
Exactly. But we've been really dedicated to the open source community. So, I mean, we use a handful of models in different parts of our architecture, not just one model, but, we've gotten very close with Llama, which is Meta's models.
Yep.
And one of the values of open source is just optionality. So if you think about, the biggest cost of goods and to deliver our service is ultimately infrastructure and hosting.
For sure.
By aligning with open source models, we have the most optionality around where our models are hosted, the speed at which we can access those models, and how that infrastructure is actually managed by our team.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, it made me think because I've seen companies kind of address that issue in different ways. Some are, hey, I exclusively use, for example, I have a client who they have a partnership with OpenAI where like they get access to their newest models before other companies.
That's a good advantage.
That's part of like they have it in their pitch because why wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course. You got to talk about that.
And then that's something else I think we've talked a little bit on the show about this with some like product people about how like what's the actual differentiator between them. And I think those of, dare I even say, put me in there and say us in the know is differentiator anyway.
Yeah.
It's more the thing you're building around it.
100%.
So
it's a really common misnomer. So one, I did observe early on that many tools were giving the user the choice of what model they were selecting.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a terrible idea. Like my customers are specifically not AI experts. So they don't want to be told, pick between Claude, ChatGPT, or Llama. Their answer is, well, which one should I use to solve my problem? Sense. And when you abstract away the consumer component of accessing a model and you're accessing it via an API, and you think about a tool like ours that has, it's kind of like picturing like a Rube Goldberg machine, the amount of scaffolding around the foundational model. It's not just like making a call to a model with one prompt.
Yeah.
When you're really abstracting that level away, the models are relatively similar and at parity.
Well, they're not the differentiator in if the product's good or not, right?
Correct.
And that's the part of your story that I find like fascinating now because it's not even 2 years later from when you went out pitching. And I can't believe anyone now would say there's no business in the application layer and the only thing that's going to matter is investing in which one of these models run the best and most efficient.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It sounds insane.
And our team does invest in keeping up to speed with the latest model announcements. And investors now are obsessed with the application layer. They love the application layer. Many of them wish they'd invested in the pre-seed round when we're at a much lower valuation and, didn't have any revenue. But, I, from working with our engineers, have come to understand picking between the models under the hood is more like picking if you're going to host on Google, Amazon, or Microsoft, in that there's not a whole lot of functional difference to your end users if implemented correctly. Now, that's because 2 years ago, there was so much money poured into the foundational model companies that, candidly, it's been great for a company like mine, where all of the foundational models now have long context windows, have good reasoning skills, support multiple languages.
That's fair. Maybe I'm taking for granted the fact that the competition in that space, because it's so large, has produced so many good models that it doesn't matter so much, because they've all done a good job of building something worth using.
Exactly.
Instead of just saying, they're not differentiated.
Yeah, and then look, DeepSeek comes out, and say what you will about, whether or not they really spent $5 million training the model, or, some people think that they spent $1 billion training the model, and,
who knows?
Who knows? But it's incredible for a company like mine, not necessarily because we then use DeepSeek, but because it creates massive downward pressure from 100%. A pricing standpoint on all the other foundational models.
Built around making what powers your product better.
Exactly.
And you don't even have to invest into it.
Yeah. So, if I'm a trucking company and all of a sudden gasoline gets cut by 100x per gallon,
that's good news.
Yeah, and it's not just that you become more profitable; it's that you really shift your perspective on the amount of LLM usage you can have inside of your product. So all of a sudden, because it's now 100x cheaper to access what's called a token, which is the unit of output from a foundational model, there are now ample more opportunities to bring LLMs into our users' workflows.
That makes sense. We're taking a short break, and when we come back, we'll discuss Ben's experience building a team and some other challenges and responsibilities he faces as CEO. We'll also learn where he got the name Iris from and why he's choosing to build in New York City. So tell me a little bit about Iris as the company size, who your clients are, if you want to name some or can, or just
absolutely.
What industries you're selling into.
Yeah. So
and maybe a bit of the growth story since 18 months ago or whatever it was.
Yeah. So July of 2024 was when we got our SOC 2 certification, which meant we could start selling our product.
Cool.
And we added over.
Wait, July of 2024?
Yeah.
So not even a year ago.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had to do a 6-month active audit period with the auditor to get our SOC 2. So July of 2024, we start really pounding the pavement on selling our product. We signed 50 paying customers in the last half of the year, included one of the largest Big 4 management consulting firms in the world, a handful of the largest law firms in the country that are now also doing RFPs and security reviews, massive city government that uses our software to actually analyze RFP responses, and then primarily B2B tech companies that have complex solutions, multiple product lines. So Cortex, who you mentioned, shout out Cortex. They're one of our largest and happiest customers.
Awesome.
A company called Corelight that's selling network detection software to the government as one of our largest customers. And mostly software and hardware companies are the biggest part of our customer base.
Cool. And how big is your team now?
We'll be 17 people starting Monday. We have two new hires starting Monday, our first product hire and our first marketing hire. And then we have, our company's about half engineers and half sales and customer success.
And are you guys all here in New York or mostly?
Mostly here in New York. And so when we started, I was hot desking at a WeWork, sitting at a different desk every day. We just, with the closing of our recent financing, opened up an office down the street from here in Midtown. So we did the ribbon cutting earlier this week. We've got the team in the office in New York. I love building in New York. I was saying to you, it's the epicenter of enterprise, right? I mean, it's
talk about it.
Literally from being in the mailroom, I saw that 2 of our customers were in the same WeWork as us. Like first day, I was like so giddy. I was like, oh my gosh, that's one of our clients. Like they're in the same building. So I love it. And I think like right now, there's such a desire from professionals to have in-person interactions that having an office space and being able to invite customers, invite prospects, invite investors, like people are clamoring to get out of their apartments and do things in person.
My take on this, I'm interested to hear yours as you're building a company, was like, I can't unsee what I've seen. And like being around the right people every day made an irreplaceable impact on a company, not just culturally, but from like a knowledge share and just camaraderie, like happy to be here, community aspect that like I don't have remote and I don't have now that I'm on my own. So like as you're building a company, how do you think about that?
As a startup, you have to celebrate every win together and you have to talk about every painful, hard thing and loss together. Yeah. And one of the things that's really hard to do is build culture. And you get culture not for free with office space, but you get like what some people call like forced norming, which is like,
I'd say it's just organic.
Yeah, organic. That's the right way to say it. It just does develop and happen.
The alternative take on it is that talent doesn't necessarily want it. So are you like knocking out some of the top talent? I don't disagree. I'm just saying the devil's advocate is like, well, if people don't want it, then whatever. I think the benefit is we're talking about New York.
Yes.
So you're going to have a lot of great talent here anyway.
Yep.
If you're building, let's say, I hate when I do this because I pick like a geographic location and then I'm like, sorry. Let's say Alberta, Canada.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you're saying you have to be in the office in Alberta, Canada, it might be hard to get some top talent, right? So I do think it's dependent on like where you're building and obviously like the people want it or not.
Yeah. I mean, my last company was in DC. We were an essential business during the pandemic. We were closed one day. And it was when I was there putting up plexiglass between desks. So I was also used to building that way. But like even DC, you don't have anywhere near the diversity and talent. Like your closest engineering school is Virginia Tech. It's really hard. Here in New York, you have every industry, every type of talent. And I found in hiring that we specifically had candidates that were so eager to get back in person, going to events with their coworkers, getting mentorship, that by saying one of the benefits of the job is having an office, not trying to hide, right? Like, oh, it's hybrid. If you want to be in whatever, we got some of the top talent we ever could have imagined. It's like there was a study decades ago, pre-pandemic, that was just on people who work and working in pajamas versus putting their suit on every day. And like even just getting dressed to go to work, if you're working from home, made people enjoy their job more and better at their job and all that. So like
it's something I do actually is like
like people want to feel like they're at work. I mean, as you can imagine, as a company going from like 5 employees to 15 employees, it's like we're still trying to attract the A talent that doesn't want to sweep themselves under the rug. They want to be front and center.
I've heard from a few people books on founders and whatnot too, is that like your first 20 or so hires are cultural.
Yep.
Like these are the people who are shaping what the culture of the company will be like, and that it's actually very helpful to view it that way and not just hire based on skills if their, personality or other traits you don't think are a fit with where you want to go.
Yep.
And I've seen some interesting things where like you might hire someone who's great at something. They're not a cultural fit. I always found that to be harder to correct because like we're not going to change who we are, and it's really hard to expect someone to change who they are and be happy.
Very true. Just the last thing I'll say on hiring, the other thing that I was really adamant on in building out our team at this stage is I only have people on my team that have lived this problem before. So like, we eat our own dog food.
Yeah.
I have done 1,000 RFPs in my career. I have a ton of conviction that I'm solving a problem that I've lived, and solving this problem requires an insane amount of empathy with our customers or end users. And it's a huge hack to have a sales team and an engineering team and co-founders that have all lived this pain and not have to go through their 10,000 hours of becoming an expert in it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I actually really like that. Yep. I haven't heard someone say that before, but that resonates. Like I do agree with you should know the pain of your customer, but I don't know that everyone hires that way. So let's learn a little bit about you.
Sure.
Like, how did you get into like tech in general? It sounds like sales was your first, but a little like path, and then how you came to New York and some of your favorite aspects.
Yeah, so I've always been into technology. Like always was obsessed with computers, and from like my middle school had like a daily news station, and so I learned like Final Cut and computers and Photoshop then, and did like freelance website development through college. And then joined an EdTech startup when I graduated college, which was the company I was the chief operating officer of. And that's where I fell in love with software. And I fell in love with bringing products to market. I had the fortunate pleasure of bringing multiple products to market at that company that, impacted over 50 million people. I invented the first mobile acceptance letter, which is now how 1 in 4 students get accepted to college in this country through technology that I brought to market. And I got obsessed with what I like to call bringing Jetson-era solutions to Flintstone-era problems. So taking problems that have been around for centuries and have always happened the same way, but now can really be disrupted with brand new technologies like what we're doing with RFPs.
That's definitely what you're doing.
Yeah. So I always loved technology. I then fell in love with bringing software to market. I moved to New York because my then girlfriend, now wife, had moved to New York, and I followed her here, and then fell in love with her.
Another thing you did wisely.
And the city. I mean, the tech scene here is insane. It makes I only then realized in moving here how DC does not really actually have a tech scene. And I named the company after my grandma Iris, whose husband, my grandpa Paul, spent his career responding to RFPs for Lockheed Martin, albeit on a typewriter, not with AI. I'd like to think he'd be really proud of what I'm doing, but would probably hate AI, because I remember I interviewed him in middle school and he thought calculators were the death of my generation. So I don't know that he would have loved the technology we're doing, but the problem's been around forever and people haven't really moved the needle on how to solve the core problem of responding to RFPs and writing proposals.
Yeah, no, I think it's cool. Like, there's a lot of opportunities still for existing technology.
Yes.
It's cool to say, hey, we're bringing something different to this problem based on tech that literally wasn't available even like 3 years ago.
Exactly. I mean, none of the technology that we use today was commercially viable and available 3 years ago.
That's the part I think is cool, is like this new tech is able to solve a lot of these existing business problems.
Mm-hmm.
We were speaking before we started recording about like how we feel the average, I don't know what we want to say, just person misunderstanding AI is that it's only good enough to power a new tool. It is not itself the thing
100%
that solves the problem. And that's why I still going back to this, like, investors didn't see that even a few years ago, is clearly like the world has just shifted into like, no, now we get like how we can use this. So when people are afraid of it, it's kind of like, it's not really thinking on its own as much as you're telling it what to respond to.
Yeah. Yeah. And with the right instructions and guidance, you can get it to think in the way you need it to.
You get to do amazing things.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what's cool, is like now that that's being unlocked, we're seeing all these use cases that have real value that are, being built right here in New York or across the world. It's really, I think like that's what the AI revolution is
For sure.
just getting better answers quicker, but based on things we already know. But where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Newton, Mass, outside of Boston.
We know where that is.
And then I lived in DC, and then I lived here. I've only ever lived on the East Coast.
So what's your favorite difference between New York and DC?
DC, kind of similar to San Francisco, but politics versus tech, is an entire city and industry geared around, or city geared around one industry.
Yeah.
New York is a cross section of the world. Yeah. And it always blows my mind how you have every customer, prospect, investor, vendor, skill set, anything you need in the city. And, I still feel a bit like an outsider having only lived here for 2 years and now just kind of breaking into the tech scene more formally. But I mean, it's just incredible to have every resource you need right around you. Everyone I've met here is hyper ambitious and really cares about the work they're doing. And that's not something I think most cities can say for themselves.
That's what I found is like the commonality.
Yeah.
I talked to everyone on the show about this, but also outside, is that no one comes to New York as the easy way out. You come here to work hard, to hustle, whatever. So you have a lot of different backgrounds, but a lot of the similar mentality that is tenacious. So when you team that up, I do find like that's why so many big businesses are created here or industries exist here that are difficult, is you attract people with a mindset who are willing to tackle difficult things.
Yeah.
And you feed off each other.
Your point about culture, like, the default culture of anyone you're recruiting and meeting here is hard.
Yeah, I found that true with lawyers too. Is funny. Is like one thing when you're hiring a lawyer, you never have to worry about work ethic. All right, Ben, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Anyone or anything you want to shout out before we wrap up?
Shout out to the team, obviously. Shout out to Grandma Iris, obviously. Shout out to Cortex and all of our customers. Anyone who's responding to RFPs, doing proposals, reach out, ben@heyiris.ai, and we'll get you on the platform.
All right, great. Thanks again, and talk to you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Empire State of Grind. If you like what you heard, please share, like, and subscribe. You can find more information about the guests and sponsors in the show notes, and special thanks to our sponsors and our producer, Brian Neiman. We'll be back with new episodes twice a month, and as we say in New York, peace, we out.